All right, Matt Iseman, welcome to the podcast, man. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. Thank you for
Thanks,
being
Stu.
here.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. And so I was wondering if you could start things off and just kind of paint a picture for the audience of what did life look like for little Matt as you're growing up in Denver, Colorado?
Oh, the Cleavers. It was mom and dad. Dad was a doctor, but and mom graduated Phi Beta Kappa from college. Probably smarter than my dad, but decided we were her job, and so
Hmm.
just had a mom who was always home and who just I think felt like it was a house that was filled with love and really where we were just supported. I think my mom just had boundless love for us, probably to an unhealthy degree. Where one of the
Yeah.
reasons I became a stand up comedian, I always say, is the audience is my mom's hugs now. And people, yeah, because people go into stand up for one of two reasons: you weren't hugged enough as a kid, or like me, you were hugged too much. And you just need that affirmation. But growing up, played sports. Um, you know, had my best friend two doors down,
Nice.
and really just a very I think very lucky childhood. And my parents worked very hard to give that to us, and it
Yeah.
was lucky to go to a great public high school, and then from there just kind of launch into the world, only to realize I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing you say that. I have a ridiculously similar background. Dad's a doctor, mom, she's a coach, but did that to be home so that she could like
Yeah,
raise us. And again, a ridiculous amount of love, right? Which is
yeah,
an awesome thing to grow up in a house where you just feel love. I would agree. It's like a blessing to be able to grow up in an environment like that. And one of the things that my mom always told me, and I think this is a silver lining we'll kind of see, or that I've seen in your life, at least from researching you, is she always said, encourage, don't discourage. And as I went through my life, whether it was trying something new or doing something like in high school, I stopped Spanish and I took sign language because everybody speaks sign language, obviously, and it's going to be
right,
super useful in life. Not at all, but they were like, whatever, like that's what you want to do. We're going to
right.
encourage you. And it was one of the coolest things I did. And so, just an interesting note that I noticed that we both had that, but I want to kind of jump forward into your life to the point where you've gone to Princeton, I believe it was. You get your doctorate. You're in residency. Um, to most people on the outside world, it's like Dr. Matt Eisman, you've made it. Your parents are proud of you. Yet you kind of have this gut feeling inside of you that's uneasy. I was just wondering if you could
Yeah.
just kind of take us into that.
Yeah, I think it was the realization of medicine was the perfect career for me on paper.
Hmm.
I love sciences. I loved people. I saw my dad was a doctor, but he never pressured me to go into medicine. But I think I saw his example where I saw the incredible satisfaction he had from his job, and I also saw the respect he got. And I think when you are looking for a career, the idea of doing something where you get to help people, where you have respect, it's a steady career.
Yeah.
I think the idea of I was very good at sciences and I love being around people. It was the perfect career, I thought. And then as I got into it, I realized you don't live your life on paper. And it was tough because I think even during medical school, as much as I loved it, I loved the challenge of medical school. But I think even then I had a little unease, and it's funny how I didn't listen to it, or at least I thought this will resolve. This
It'll go
will
away.
go away. And even I will say, so even when I came to the point of in residency, when I had this epiphany that, and it really was, it struck me. It was the middle of the night. I was in an ICU, and we were getting slammed with patients, and all of a sudden I thought, my God, soon enough I'm going to be the one making life or death decisions. And as I was sitting there, I just thought, I want to go home. I want to be out of here. I felt I felt like I felt like a fraud in the hospital because I
Mm.
didn't feel like I was committed, and I assumed everyone else around me was like you see on ER, these noble people like coming up
Yeah.
with these incredible ideas. And meanwhile, I just felt like I was struggling to stay afloat and feeling overwhelmed and feeling like I wasn't doing a service to my patients the best I could. And I felt like I remember when I was going in for call, I would just have a pit in my stomach, like when the weekend was ending, in elementary school,
Yeah.
like the Sunday blues. And I thought, this is not a way a doctor should feel. And eventually, when I was in that ICU, I thought, listen, I can suffer through this, but I can't risk my patients because I just had this fear. My God, what if I'm not present and something goes wrong and someone's life is forever impacted or God forbid ends because of me and a decision? And I thought I just couldn't. And it was this sense of guilt and fear. That's when I thought I've got to do something about this. And it wasn't as though I said, I need to be a stand-up comedian. That's always been my calling. I thought I've got to figure this out. I got to clear my head and figure out what's going on, because I think it's growing up. I think I was someone who focused on achieve and what's next, and
Yeah.
be it in sports, be it in school, and you almost get on a treadmill of I go to college, now it's medical school, then I'll become a doctor, and it's hard because I think sometimes you don't step back and go, is this still the path I should be on?
Right.
And it all kind of came crashing down in that ICU when I realized I felt I have to figure out, is this the right path? And so I knew I had to do something, but then came the realization that my dad's a doctor. He was a professor at the University of Colorado where I was working. And now I'm thinking, I have to tell my dad. And again, my dad wasn't someone who said, this is what you're going to do, but I didn't want to disappoint him. And so it took another month or 2 months before I worked up the courage to say,
Of course.
I have to step away. I have to try something else. And, in that time I thought, what could I do? Be a ski bum, whatever. And I thought, you know what? I did stand up a couple times. I thought, I've never really done anything creative. I'm going to move out to LA, try stand up just to clear my head. And so I told my dad that I was doing that. And the first words he told me when I said, I'm going to take a break from medicine and try stand up comedy, the first thing he said to me was, life is short. Do what makes you happy. And it was such a weight lifted off of my shoulders when he said that. Because honestly, if he'd gone, no, you're not, you're staying a doctor because that's crazy, I don't know that I would have had the courage to do it. I probably would have said, you're right, this is crazy. I'll just figure this out. And I don't know where I'd be right now. Maybe I would have figured my way forward, but I feel lucky that I got to come out here because I got out to LA and I started doing stand up, and it was just in a matter of weeks. And I'm not doing stand up, in the Hollywood Bowl with thousands of screaming fans. I'm doing it in coffee houses for four people who are, staring at their notebook. And even with that, even with these awful crowds and not getting a tremendous response, there was something in me that clicked, that just felt like I felt at home on the stage. And I felt like, this is how I'm meant to help people. Not exactly saving lives, but trying to still make
do
people
it in a
feel
different
better.
way.
In a much smaller, less important way.
Yeah. And so a couple things I kind of want to pick in there. And it reminds me of a situation I had in my life where I had to have a conversation with, I grew up, dad's a doctor. I have an older brother, and I always felt like I needed to be my older brother to basically get the love from my dad that I really wanted. And it was one of the most heavily weighted conversations that always weighed on me of I need to talk to him. I need to do this so I can build the relationship I really want with him. And obviously a very different conversation that you had, but the similarity is I have to have this conversation with someone and I believe that this is what they're going to say. And that's why I don't want to have this.
Right.
And it's I think so many people get caught up in that space of the unknown and assuming that something's going to happen. So they never do it. When in both of our situations, it's you have that conversation that's difficult. And as soon as you were to just weight off your shoulders, just a deep exhale that you get to take from having that conversation and just exploring the option of what the heck's actually going to happen here? Because it's better in reality to, even if your dad said you're staying, you have a doctor, at least you know what happened in that conversation versus running through your mind every single time, multiple times a day, probably going, what are they going to think? Are they going to accept me?
I want to have this. I got to do this.
And it's
I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people go through that, and I still go through it when there are things you want to bring up, and And I think, I'm very much someone who's a pleaser. And so it's hard. And I think that's one of the things that I try to work on, because you do a disservice to the other person because you're not giving them a chance to
Yeah.
respond, but they sense like there's something you're not telling me what's
Yeah,
going on.
there's an energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things too is that you gave yourself permission to like take a break, like to take a breath, to take a year
Yeah.
to kind of explore. And I'm assuming at this point, the amount of money you've probably put into school is a
Not
lot.
insignificant. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's funny. I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and obviously, in medicine, it's very tangible, right?
Yeah.
You have student loans, you have your path in front of you. You know how long your training is going to be, and subsequent training could be even longer. And so,
Right.
anytime you take off, you feel like, oh my God, I'm delaying things. But when you step back and start looking at the scope of your life, you realize a year to try to figure out, really, to make sure you're really aligned with, okay, my heart is in this, my mind is in this, my soul is in this, is so worth it if you can. And I
Yeah.
know I was very lucky where, my parents were like, listen, you're gonna have a little cushion here. And then I was lucky, I got into commercials very early on, so I was making far more from commercials than I was as a resident. And that
Yeah.
made it a lot easier too.
Totally.
But I think it's one of those things where we find a lot of excuses, um and I think sometimes, kind of, when you leap into that unknown, when you find that passion and you feel that drive, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I will figure out a way to make this work.
Yeah.
I always, liken it to, you could be the greatest violinist in the world, but if you never pick up a violin, you
Mm.
wouldn't know. And so I feel so lucky that growing up, entertainment was never on my radar in
Yeah, that's
Colorado.
crazy.
So to have found my way out here and to found what I think I'm meant to do, and I just feel lucky, because it would have been so easy to go my whole life with never finding it. And I think a lot of people probably feel that. And I was also lucky enough, I wasn't married, so I could come out, and if
Right.
I got my ass kicked, go back with my tail
You were
between my
okay.
legs. And I also knew, like, my program said you have a year for sure, 2 years, and you can come back. Your space is held. So I knew at least there was a 2-year window. And so I kind of set some markers to make sure I wasn't diluted, and to be realistic, and not make sure I wasn't like 10 years later out here, just
Yeah.
still waiting tables with my medical degree going, it's gonna happen someday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So one of the things I think is really interesting in that too is it's like at that point I'm guessing you are early 20s maybe?
Late 20s.
Early
Oh
late
yeah,
20s.
medical
Okay.
school. Yeah, it was 4 years of medical school to your residency. So I think I was 28 when I moved out here.
Okay, so 28, and it's really interesting that at least in your story it almost sounds like up until 28 when you said I'm going to take a year to go try this thing and do this, it was almost the first time in 28 years that you said, let me stop on this treadmill that we kind of talked about and
Yeah.
just like step back and analyze this after 3 decades almost. And it's like most people, I think what's crazy is they get to 35, 40, sometimes people it's 60, 70 when they finally step off that treadmill and take a step back and go, holy shit, what the hell did I
Yeah.
just do for the last little bit? And I think it's such a blessing that if you obviously you're given the support, which is tremendous, but just giving yourself the permission to say, hey, I'm going to take 6 months. I'm going to have no plans. I'm just going to step back from whatever the heck I'm doing. If I'm not like so lit up in my life, let me just take 6 months or a year, give myself a year and just see what happens.
It's hard. The hardest thing I think is also thinking my imagination of what other people are thinking of me, of what my friends are thinking, what the other doctors are thinking in the program, what my professors are thinking, and to be able to say, listen, odds are, very often I'm thinking, oh my God, they're all going to be, and meanwhile they're like, hey, I got to get through my day. And I think
Yeah,
sometimes I know as someone who has a tendency to be a pleaser, you don't want to disappoint people. And I think that's something too that keeps people frozen, is this idea of not only am I scared to admit what I want, but I'm scared to let people down. not realizing very often, like these conversations we had with our dad, where we were thinking of what they were going to say, and they were like, "Hey, go
Yeah.
good. I wish I would have done
Yeah.
something like that." And I think that the thing I found too is, my friends all joked, going, "You're going to be a comedian. You're like the 17th funniest one of our friends." But in the end, I think they all also were like, "Good for you for taking
Yeah.
a swing," because I think sometimes, as hard as I was working to be a doctor, as hard as my friends were working, a lot of them were in finance, whatever. I think sometimes that's almost an easy path because it's like, I'm just staying on this treadmill.
Yeah.
I'm just going, rather than saying, I'm going out into the unknown and I have no idea what's going to happen. And I think that when you do that, a lot of people will respect that and then say, like, "Hey,
Totally.
what was it like? Is
Yeah.
that something I should think about?" And
Totally.
it's, especially when it works too. I've been very lucky that, I'm out here now 21 years and still getting to work. So thank God, at least at this point, it feels like, all right, the decision
Yeah.
worked out.
Yeah. One of the things my mentor used to tell me, I would say the first time I went against the sort of normal grain and stepped off the treadmill for me, it was like 20 years old. Because I left college initially, and my mentor taught me this thing. He said, you have to have rhino skin, and a rhino skin, it's so tough you could shoot it with a bullet, it doesn't penetrate it. And it's like, I initially left college to explore an option and an opportunity that came into my life.
Yeah.
And it was like, my next door neighbor was my best friend growing up, and his parents looked to my parents and said, what is Stu doing? He's leaving school, and friends and families are all like, what do you mean he's leaving college? Like, that's what you're supposed to do. And it was the single-handed biggest blessing of my life.
Yeah.
Was to leave for a few years, explore, try things in life. And I think really having that rhino skin helped. And so to keep going, I'm curious. So you're in Hollywood, you're doing stand-up to 2 to 3 people or whoever, how many people are there, in random bars left and right. I'm kind of curious, when do you feel like, and you're getting into commercials, so you're doing there, you're making good money.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you ever had a point when you felt like you quote unquote made it?
Only recently. Only recently. And I think part of it is also because I knew I left medicine. There was always this, I don't know if it was the comparison, but this is such a fickle career, where every show you're on ends. American Ninja Warrior has been a gift. I'm on my 12th season on the show. We're doing a spinoff show, but it will end. Hopefully not for a while, but it will end.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in a career that is so uncertain, what you learn is that you have to bet on yourself. And it took me a while, I think, to make my peace with that, where it just felt like, even when I was doing commercials are even more. I was the voice of DirecTV for 3 years. And then one day I turned on the TV and I saw a DirecTV ad and I go, that's not my voice. And that's how you find out. And so, you're all of a sudden you learn, don't take it for granted. So I always plan every season is going to be the last. So you're thinking, what else is out there? But you start to, I think, kind of develop this mentality that I will figure it out. And so I think when I felt like I made it, I can't pinpoint an exact time, but there was just a shift, and right around, I got to go on Celebrity Apprentice, and even that, I was a last minute asked. I was asked about 7 days before it started, and the guy who called me from NBC is like, listen, we're down to the bottom of the barrel. We're looking for somebody. I was in the NBC family, and he goes, honestly, we've got enough people who may be loose cannons. We need someone who we think is semi-reliable, just so the brands you'll do stuff for the brands. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if I am your absolute last choice. Just give me a chance. And I think when I got through that and ended up winning and becoming friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger, that was a moment where I started to think, all right, this is my career. This is it. I think I'm good at this. I think I can do this it's funny. I even hesitate saying it because I don't want to jinx it and wake up tomorrow going, all the shows are canceled. You're done. There's still a fear.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood, everybody.
But even still, I feel like I could figure something out. It may not be on a network show. Maybe it's a podcast, whatever. But I feel like I will find something because I really believe I'm meant to do this. And I think I've also seen I have enough confidence that I'm good at this
Yeah.
in certain regards. And so it was a really subtle shift. It wasn't a big light bulb, but all of a sudden it just started feeling confident, where I thought, no matter what you throw at me, at least hosting wise, to
Right.
feel like I can handle it. And that was a switch, because even, God, 10, 15 years in, I think there was still points where I would be like just nervous, going, man, I hope I don't fall on my face. And you still get those feelings, and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
go away. But it also kind of motivates you, but it's really trying to switch, I think, to, hey, I'm excited. I can't wait to be challenged and and find out what else I can do. So
Yeah.
it's uh but it's, it is and it is also, I think, when you talk about that rhino skin, only recently have I had the sense that, the actor's worst nightmare, the host's worst nightmare is being unemployed and feeling like I don't know when the next one's coming.
Yeah.
And, hopefully feeling like, all right, I'll figure something out, even, whatever it is, having a little more
Yeah.
confidence with that.
Yeah, I think one thing you touched on there that is so key is it's like when you find your lane, you have such a great confidence, right? If
Yeah.
you're like, I help people, you're kind of like, well, what do you mean you help people? But if you're like, I help people feel good by laughing, you're like, okay, I feel
Right.
better at that. You're like, well, I help people feel laughing by hosting, and like the more narrow you get down, all of a sudden you start to be like, yeah, that really is my thing, and I have
Yeah.
confidence in. And one of the things that I thought that was really, really intriguing when I was doing some research on you is you are so good at sort of assessing yourself and articulating, what am I good at? What am I not good at? How do I stay doing more of what I'm good at?
Yeah.
And really just like assessing yourself and
Well,
doing it.
part of it too is I listen to where I'm wanted. And, because I came out here thinking I'm going to be in sitcoms, maybe a movie star.
Yeah.
And then I was doing stand up, I was doing sketch, I got into hosting. And this was, particularly when I started 2004, hosting reality TV was really considered the low end of entertainment. It may still be.
Yeah.
But I think I started to find what I was good at was I was really good at being myself. And I
Mm,
love that. I wasn't particularly good at being another character, as in acting,
right.
evidenced by if you ever see me in a sitcom, I'm not great. But but I think when I found that, I also had the intelligence, and some people on the other hand will say, no, I am going to be a sitcom actor, and I don't care if it takes 20 years. And I respect that path. I, on the other hand, really had a belief of, I'm going to say yes to everything that comes my way. And I'm
Mm,
talking very often free projects, projects where I'm losing money, projects where I just thought, who knows what's going to come of it, meetings and shows that seem to throw away and then 5 years later come back, and it's a great opportunity that came from that. And I think the longer I'm in this career, the more I see showing up, working hard, being professional, being pleasant, being someone people want to work with.
yeah.
In the end, people notice that. And that's one of the things I do always I'm always
Yeah.
conscious of is feeling like if I get an opportunity, no matter how small, even though there's no pay, feeling like this is still an opportunity to go out there and do my best. And it started coming in stand-up comedy, where my friends and we would go out, and sometimes there'd be two people. And it's like,
Yeah.
don't be mad at the two people who showed up for the 100 people who you wanted to be there. Those two people came for a show. Give them the best show you can. Because then when you get in front of 200 people, if you can make two people laugh, that's hard. So when you get in front of the 200, you're like, this is easy. And so it was
That's good.
that mentality of, I want to do it in the hardest situation when things are against me, so that when I get an opportunity where it's really aligned, you can knock it out of the park. But that only comes with putting that work in. And that's the thing I think that people don't see is, when I host a show, I think it's skills that I've learned. There's my Liam Neeson impression, where it's really been 20 years of stand up, of sketch, even my medical career of being able to handle information. And it's all of these things that you draw upon, all these experiences that you've learned over a career of sometimes completely forgettable, embarrassing projects, but it all gets you to a place where when you get that opportunity, you're ready for it. Because so often I see people out here who sit on the couch saying, I'm waiting for and when that shot comes, they're not ready. They're not battle tested.
Right.
They haven't put the, because I often talk to people, they go, what's the secret to stand-up comedy? There is no secret. Get up and do it and fail and have a little success and fail again. You have to put reps in. And so that's why I think why you say yes to little things is those are reps and those are relationships. And when you get that opportunity and you walk in going, listen, I've done this under far worse circumstances, so I'm ready for this. And that's a great feeling when you realize I've put the work in, so right now I can enjoy this moment.
Yeah. I love it. It's like you hear about like Kobe and Michael Jordan.
You know, I'm very similar to that. Just 1,000 free throws. Yeah, it's, you know, listen, it's still stand-up comedy. I don't want to be too dramatic, but it is. I mean, there are times when, you know, I'd be at a youth hostel where nobody spoke English, and you're still up there doing your jokes, going, how do I reach a crowd where you're like, how can I still connect? And I think that's what a host does. We tell stories, we connect to people, and so that's what I always try to do. And the other thing is, I want people to have a good time. And I want it to be, I always feel like whatever I'm doing, I'm throwing a party. Whether it's Ninja Warrior, hosting the 4th of July, you know, stand-up, it's like I'm throwing a party and I want everybody to have the best time of their lives. And so that's how I approach hosting is I don't want anyone to feel picked on. I don't want anyone to feel left out. I want us all to feel like, man, that was a good time.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Matt, we could be here for hours. But I'm curious if
I know.
people
Anytime I talk about myself, Stu. Look at my wall. It's all filled with me. This is so embarrassing. But whatever.
That's good stuff.
True.
That's beautiful, beautiful wall. So, I know you're in a lot of places, but if people want to find more info, see what you're up to.
Yeah, Twitter, where Instagram, Matt Iseman. Ninja Warrior premieres May 31st on NBC. We're going to have Ninja Jr. coming back this fall on the Peacock. And the other thing, I don't know if it's been announced, but Akbar and I are going to be hosting a morning show on the Peacock for the Olympics called Tokyo Live. And I'm so excited. We get to go to Tokyo. We get to be there. And that is, I mean, like growing up, being an athlete, watching the Olympics, to get to go, be a part of it, you know, have a front row seat. I can't wait.
Yeah. Again, made it. Stamp.
That's, right. I mean, it is. And at this point, it's one of those things where I'm going to do a great job, but I'm also going to make sure every day I step back and go, look at this. Look at what I get to do. Look at how I'm at the Olympics and I'm getting paid to be here. And I never want to lose that appreciation for it.
Yeah. So last question I got for you. I ask this to every guest because we're all about how people find direction, but we want to do it through execution, right? We got to take action. That's how you're going to figure it out. So I would be curious, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
I think it's you listen to the urges inside of you and then try it. Like, again, before I moved out to LA, I had done stand-up a few times in New York. I was in medical school in New York, and then when I was doing residency. And so I'm not saying just quit your job and go out and do it. You know, keep one foot in, but try it. And whatever it is, you know, being a surfer, a skier, or being a chef, I think you can take some steps, take a lesson, start doing it, but commit. And I think it really is important to not just have that dream, but to say, I'm going to take a class. I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to do something that moves me towards what could be my dream. And if it doesn't work, to then say, well, then I'm going to try something else. But I think saying yes to opportunities, saying yes to yourself, and then having the courage to make it, because so many people I know go, I want to do stand-up. I go, well, okay, just sign up. Go do it. Go commit, because you'll start writing. You know, if you have a week, you'll start writing. And when you get on stage, you know, you will sink or swim, and you will feel, you will know in your bones. I think the first time you do it, no matter how good or bad it is, you'll know, oh my God, this is where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Well, Matt, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much for making the time. Thank you so much
Likewise,
for
Stu.
being here with us.
Thanks,
I
man.
really appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Thank you.